Some people mistake kindness for weakness. My daughter-in-law made that mistake on a Friday morning, and by Monday, she'd never make it again. I've lived in Phoenix for over 43 years. I know this city the way I know my own heartbeat, the way the summer heat hits you like a wall at 7 a.m., the way the Santa Cruz neighborhood goes quiet on weekday mornings, the way my driveway on Mesquite Trail looks exactly the same every single day. I had one thing on my schedule that Friday. One thing, a doctor's appointment. 8:45, doctor, Pullman's office on East Thomas Road in Phoenix. Took me 6 weeks to get that appointment. 6 weeks of calling, being put on hold, being told the next available slot was a month and a half out. 6 weeks of writing it on my kitchen calendar in red marker, and making sure I went to bed Thursday night with my keys on the counter, my insurance card in my wallet, and my route already mapped in my head. I woke up at 6:30 a.m., showered, got dressed, made my coffee, and walked out my front door on Mesquite Trail at 7:50 a.m., with 55 minutes to spare, and I stood in my driveway and stared at nothing. My truck, my black 2019 Ford F-150, parked right there. Every single morning wasn't there. I just stood there, real still, and looked at that empty concrete slab like it personally offended me, because something was wrong, very wrong. My brain did that thing where it refuses to accept what your eyes are clearly showing it. I walked back inside, checked the garage. Maybe I'd parked it inside last night. I hadn't. Checked my phone. Maybe someone called while I was in the shower. They hadn't. I walked back outside and stood in the exact same spot and stared at the exact same empty driveway. Someone took my truck. I was already reaching for my phone to call 911 when it buzzed in my hand. A text from Cindy. "Hey, William. Looking for something? Welcome to Dad's Raw Revenge. Hit that like button. Drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from." This story is going to take you somewhere. I turned around, walked back inside, set my coffee down on the counter without spilling a drop, which honestly deserves its own medal, and I called my son Jimmy. He lives 12 minutes away in Tempe. He didn't pick up. I texted Jimmy, "Where is my truck?" No question mark, because that wasn't a question. I stood in my kitchen for 11 minutes staring at my phone. I read the text again. She already knew I'd be looking for it. She texted me before I even called, which means she knew exactly what she'd done. I called her immediately. She picked up on the third ring, and I could hear it right away. Road noise. Wind. The faint sound of someone laughing in the background. "Cindy!" I kept my voice flat, calm, controlled. "Where is my truck?" "Oh, William." Bright, cheerful, like I just asked about the weather. "Okay. So, don't be mad. Jimmy had an early meeting, and I needed to pick up my parents from Sky Harbor this morning, and my car has been making this little noise. I did not want to stress. You know how the I-10 gets. And I figured since your truck was just sitting there, you figured—" "Oh," she laughed. Actually laughed. "I didn't want them taking an Uber all the way to Cindy." She stopped. The road noise kept going. "Good. Did you ask me?" I said. "At any point did you pick up a phone and ask me if you could take my truck?" Silence. I didn't think it would be a big yes or no. "Cindy." More silence. "Right." I let that sit there between us like a brick. "I have a doctor's appointment at 8:45. My voice dropped, not in anger, in the specific, deliberate tone of a man who needs the person on the other end to understand the weight of what they've done. "I need you to turn around and bring my truck back. Right now, William. I'm already on the 51. My parents land in 40 minutes, and then you should have thought about that before you took something that didn't belong to you. Then, and this is the part that told me everything I needed to know about Cindy Scott." She exhaled slow and slightly impatient, like I was the inconvenience in this situation. "I'll have it back by noon," she said. "Can't you just reschedule or take an Uber?" 6 weeks. I waited 6 weeks for that appointment, and she said in the most unbothered voice I have ever heard in my life, Can't you just reschedule? I stood in my empty driveway in the Phoenix morning heat that was already climbing toward 90 degrees, and I made a decision right then and there about what kind of man I was going to be for the rest of this situation. Bring it back. Today. Before noon. We clear? Yes. William. Absolutely. I really didn't think. I hung up, but I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I went back to my coffee and I called my neighbor Ted Barker. Need a ride to East Thomas Road. I said when he picked up, I'll explain on the way. Ted didn't ask a single question. Just said, give me 10 minutes. That's the difference between real people and the Cindys of the world. Real people show up. Ted drove me to Dr. Pullman's office and waited in the parking lot the entire time like it was nothing. On the way back, I told him what happened. He listened without interrupting, which is a rare and valuable quality in a human being. And when I finished, he was quiet for a moment. She take it without asking? He said, not a word. And she's got her own car? Apparently. It's making a noise. Ted nodded slowly. The way men nod when they're doing math in their head. Ted made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. William, my daughter's car made a grinding noise last spring. You know what it was? What? A pebble caught in the brake caliper. He glanced at me sideways. Took the mechanic 4 minutes to fix it. Noon came. I fully expected to see my F-150 rolling back down Mesquite Trail. No truck. I called. Voicemail. 12:30. Nothing. I texted Jimmy at 12:15. Your wife took my truck this morning. I almost missed my doctor's appointment. It's not back yet. He replied at 12:47. Dad, relax. LOL. She's just getting her parents settled. She'll have it back tonight. I promise. LOL. Relax. My own son. Tonight. They'd moved the goalposts from noon to tonight. Without even asking. Without even blinking. I sat down in my recliner, and I got very, very quiet. You know that feeling? That feeling when you're not even angry anymore? You've passed angry and arrived somewhere colder. That's where I was. I texted Ted Barker. Ted's a retired Maricopa County sheriff, poker buddy, straight shooter. Ted, I said when he picked up, if someone takes your vehicle without permission, what is that legally? A pause. Then, William, that's called unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. Depending on circumstances, could go as far as theft. He let out a long breath. She hasn't returned it? Not yet, I said. I'm going to give her until tonight. And if she's not back by tonight? I looked out my window at that empty driveway, at the concrete that should have had my truck on it, at the neighbors walking their dogs, living their normal Friday lives, completely unaware that my daughter-in-law had decided that what was mine was apparently also hers. Then I make a phone call. I said. Ted got quiet. All right, brother. You know my number. I hung up and went back to my recliner. Friday night came and went. No truck, no Cindy, no call. Jimmy texted at 9 p.m. Hey, Dad. Her parents wanted to go to Scottsdale for dinner and it got late. She'll definitely bring it back tomorrow morning, okay? Promise. Tomorrow morning. Scottsdale. She took my truck to Scottsdale to take her parents to dinner in Scottsdale. In my truck. I didn't respond to Jimmy's text because I was already thinking Saturday morning. Nothing. Saturday afternoon. Jimmy called. Cheerful as ever. Hey, Dad. So Cindy's parents want to check out Old Town Scottsdale tomorrow, and she was thinking she'd just keep the truck through the weekend since her Jimmy. I cut him off. Stop talking. He stopped. Your wife took my truck on Friday morning without asking me. She promised noon. Then she promised tonight. Now you're telling me she wants it through the weekend. I paused. Do I have that right? Dad, it's just a couple more days. Do I have that right? Jimmy? A long pause. Yeah. Okay, I said. Okay. Dad, don't do anything crazy. Good night. Jimmy. I hung up, and I sat there in the quiet of my house on Mesquite Trail in Phoenix, Arizona on a Saturday night, and I made a decision. Not out of anger, not out of spite, out of pure, cold, simple principle. Nobody takes what's mine. Nobody. I picked up my phone, scrolled to Ted's number, hovered over it. She wanted to treat my truck like it belonged to her. Fine. I was about to make sure everyone else treated it that way, too. I pressed call. Ted picked up on the first ring. "Ted," I said, "I need to know. If I report my vehicle stolen, what happens next?" The line was quiet for just a moment. Then Ted said, slowly and clearly, "William, the police will find it wherever it is and whoever's in it." I nodded to myself in the dark. "Perfect. Tell me everything," I said, and just like that, the clock started ticking on Cindy Scott's worst Monday morning of her entire life, Sunday night. I slept like a baby. No tossing, no turning, no staring at the ceiling running through worst-case scenarios. Just 6 solid hours of the deepest, most peaceful sleep I'd had in months. Funny what a clear conscience does for you. I woke up Monday at 6:15 a.m. Made my coffee, and I sat down at my kitchen table on Mesquite Trail, and I waited. Not nervously, not anxiously, calmly, the way a man waits when he already knows how the story ends. See, here's what Cindy didn't know. Here's what Jimmy didn't know. Here's what Frank and Judy Holloway, currently enjoying their Phoenix vacation in my truck, absolutely did not know. Sunday morning, I drove down to the Phoenix Police Department on West Washington Street, sat across from an officer named Reynolds. Young guy, sharp eyes, didn't waste words. "Mr. Scott," he said, sliding a form across the desk. "You're sure you want to file this? My truck has been gone since Friday morning." I said, "Taken without my permission. I've asked for it back multiple times. It's still gone." He nodded slowly. "And the person who has it, you know them?" "My daughter-in-law." He didn't even blink, just picked up his pen. In this city, nothing surprises anybody anymore. I signed the form, filed the report, drove home in Ted's borrowed Buick, which, by the way, Ted offered without me even asking. 6:47 on Monday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number, Phoenix area code, Mr. Scott? A woman's voice, clipped, professional. "This is dispatch with Phoenix PD. We're calling to inform you that your vehicle, 2019 Ford F150 black license plate," she read off my plate number, "has been located." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Is that right?" I said. "Yes, sir. Officers are on scene now. The vehicle was found in the parking structure off Camelback Road in Scottsdale. There are individuals present. We're going to need you to come down," and my other line started buzzing. "Cindy." "There it is, ma'am." "I'll be right there," I said. "Thank you." I clicked over. "William." Cindy's voice hit me like a smoke alarm at 3 a.m., high-pitched, cracking at the edges, all that smooth, smiley face energy completely vaporized. "William, there are police here. They said the truck was stolen. They're saying we could be arrested. My parents are right here. William." "What is happening?" I let her talk, let her spin, let her panic, let her feel every single second of this. "William, William, are you there?" "I'm here. Cindy, why? Why did you report it stolen? You know I had it. You could have just called." "I did call." "Cindy, that is not the same as calling the police." "William, my mother is crying right now. She thinks I'm going to jail." "Good." I didn't say that out loud, but I thought it so loud, I'm surprised she didn't hear it through the phone. "You took my truck," I said. My voice was even, quiet, steady as a flat line. "Without asking, without permission, for 4 days, across multiple cities. After I asked you to bring it back, it was a mistake. William, I didn't think it was that serious. And now you do." Dead silence. The kind of silence that has weight to it. There's a $2,280 towing bill, I said. The officers will explain everything else. William, you can't be serious right now. Cindy, I set my coffee mug down on the table, nice and slow. I am the most serious I have ever been in my life. Have a good morning. I hung up. My phone didn't stop for the next 40 minutes. Cindy, 7 times. Jimmy, 4 times. A number I didn't recognize that I later found out was Frank Holloway calling from his cell phone. Frank Holloway, who spent the weekend being chauffeured around Scottsdale in my truck, calling me. The nerve is generational in that family. I'll tell you that much. I let them all go to voicemail, got dressed, drove Ted's Buick down to the Scottsdale location on Camelback Road and walked into what I can only describe as a scene. Cindy was standing next to a Phoenix PD cruiser, arms crossed, mascara running, talking a mile a minute to an officer who looked like he had heard every single version of this story before and was completely unmoved. Frank and Judy Holloway were standing off to the side. Frank had his hands on his hips, looking like a man who just realized his weekend vacation had gone catastrophically sideways. Judy was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. My truck, my beautiful black completely unharmed F-150, was already hooked to a tow truck. Because here's the thing about a stolen vehicle report. Once it's filed, once that truck gets flagged in the system, the moment it's found in a parking structure, it gets towed. Automatically. Departmental procedure, $2,280. Not my problem. I walked over to the officer. Reynolds wasn't there. Different guy. Nameplate said Garrett, and introduced myself. Mr. Scott. He shook my hand. This your vehicle? Yes, sir. You filed the report yesterday. I did. He nodded, clicked something on his tablet. We're going to need your statement. The individuals present. He nodded toward Cindy and her parents. Have explained their side. We'll need yours. Happy to provide it. I said, from across the parking structure. Cindy locked eyes with me, and I want to be very precise about what I saw on her face in that moment, because it wasn't just anger. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was the specific, dawning, horrible realization that she had miscalculated. Badly. She thought I was the kind of man who would fuss and fume and ultimately do nothing. She had me confused with somebody else. I gave Officer Garrett my full statement, calmly, factually. Every date, every time, every unanswered call. I'd even written it down in my notes app on Saturday night. Ted's advice. So, I pulled out my phone and read directly from it. Garrett listened, typed, nodded. When I finished, he said, Mr. Scott, given that you know the individual and there's a family relationship, the DA has some discretion on how to proceed, but the unauthorized use charge is valid and documented. I understand. I said, the towing and impound fees are not my responsibility. I said, the vehicle was taken without my permission. He nodded, made a note. That's correct. The registered owner isn't liable for fees incurred during unauthorized use. I nodded back. $2,280. Cindy's problem, not mine. Jimmy showed up 20 minutes later. He pulled into that parking structure in Cindy's sedan, the one with Clear's throat, the clicking noise they said, the one that was apparently so undrivable that Cindy had needed my truck. And he jumped out before he'd even fully stopped. He looked at the tow truck, looked at his mother-in-law crying, looked at Cindy, looked at me. Dad. He walked over fast. His face was a mess of emotions I didn't have the energy to sort through. Dad. Why? You didn't have to do all this. This is Dad. This is crazy. Jimmy. I looked at my son, my own son, the one who texted me LOL on Friday, the one who called me Saturday afternoon and casually mentioned his wife wanted my truck through the weekend like he was asking me to pass the salt. Did you think I was joking? He opened his mouth, closed it. Every time I called you this weekend, I said, what did you think was going to happen? I thought you were just Dad. You get worked up sometimes, and then you calm down. And there it is. That right there was the whole problem in one sentence. They thought I was a man who got worked up and calmed down. A man who made noise, but ultimately moved out of the way. A man you could hand a smiley face emoji and a lol, and he'd be fine by Sunday dinner. Jimmy. I put my hand on my son's shoulder, looked him dead in the eye. I love you, but your wife took my property without permission, kept it for 4 days across 2 cities, ignored every request to return it, and assumed there would be no consequences. I paused. She assumed wrong. Jimmy's jaw tightened. His eyes went glassy for just a second. Dad. And when I get my truck back from impound, I said, I'll be putting a steering wheel lock on it, and I'll need my house key back, too. I patted his shoulder once. So, we don't have this problem again. I turned and walked back toward Officer Garrett to finish the paperwork. Behind me, I heard Cindy's voice, broken, disbelieving, saying, Jimmy, do something. And I heard my son say absolutely nothing. Sometimes silence is the loudest thing in the room. I picked up my truck from the impound lot on Tuesday morning, drove it home down Camelback Road, windows down, Phoenix sun hitting the hood of that black F-150 like a spotlight, pulled into my driveway on Mesquite Trail, parked it exactly where it belongs. I walked inside and I sat down at my kitchen table, but we weren't done yet, because here's what nobody knew. Not Jimmy, not Cindy, not Frank or Judy Holloway dabbing her eyes in a Scottsdale parking structure. The conversation I had with Officer Garrett before I left that morning. He told me something about Cindy's story, something she'd said in her statement that didn't match up with what I'd filed. Something small, something that most people would have let go. I am not most people, because you can take a man's truck. You can ignore his calls. You can send him smiley faces and LOLs and think it's over. But you should never, ever mistake a quiet man for a finished one. If you have been listening for a while, drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button while you're at it. And be sure you're subscribed. Let me tell you what Officer Garrett told me before I left that parking structure on Camelback Road while Jimmy was over consoling Cindy and Frank Holloway had finally stopped calling my phone. Garrett pulled me aside. Quiet, professional. The way cops talk when they're giving you information without technically giving you information. Mr. Scott, he said, keeping his voice low. Your daughter-in-law gave a statement this morning. Okay, I said. In her statement, she said you gave her verbal permission to use the vehicle on Friday morning. I stood very still. There it was. She didn't just take my truck. She lied to a police officer about taking my truck. She said that? I asked. Garrett looked at me evenly. That's what's in her statement. Yes. I nodded slowly, reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, opened my messages, and handed it to him without a word. He scrolled, read. His expression didn't change. Good cops never let their face give anything away. But he handed the phone back to me and made a very deliberate note on his tablet, because there it was, in black and white. Every text, every unanswered call log, Jimmy's messages casually pushing the timeline back, Cindy's own text that Friday morning, sent after she'd already taken the truck, not before, not with any mention of permission, just that grinning little emoji sitting on top of a lie she hadn't even constructed yet. No permission, no discussion, nothing. She made it up on the spot, standing in a Scottsdale parking structure with her mother crying next to her. And she thought she actually thought that I wouldn't have receipts. This is what happens when people underestimate quiet men. Mr. Scott, Garrett said carefully. A false statement in a police report is a serious matter. I understand, I said. What would you recommend? He looked at me for a long moment. I'd recommend you speak to an attorney. I shook his hand, walked to Ted's Buick, drove home, and I called an attorney. His name was Roger Patton, Family Law and Civil Litigation, office on North Central Avenue in Phoenix. Ted had used him twice and said the man was a surgeon with paperwork. I sat across from Roger on Wednesday morning and laid out everything, the truck, the timeline, the texts, the police report, Cindy's false statement, all of it. Roger listened the way good attorneys listen, completely still, pen moving, face giving nothing away. When I finished, he set his pen down and said, "Mr. Scott, you have a very clean case." "How clean?" "Squeaky." He almost smiled. "The false statement alone elevates this significantly, combined with documented unauthorized use, ignored requests for return, and the towing bill you incurred as a direct result." He tapped his notepad. "You have grounds for civil recovery of the towing fees, potential filing fees, and depending on how the DA wants to handle the false statement, Cindy could be looking at something that follows her considerably longer than a bad Monday morning." I leaned back in my chair. This was never about the money. I want to be clear about that. This was about the moment Cindy Scott looked a police officer in the eye and lied. That changed everything. "What are my options?" I asked. Roger laid out 3. I picked one, a formal demand letter, certified mail, delivered to Jimmy and Cindy's house on Dunbar Street in Tempe, 12 minutes from my driveway on Mesquite Trail. Itemized, documented, legally binding in its implications. Demanding full reimbursement of the $2,280 towing and impound fees within 14 days. And attached to that letter, a copy of Cindy's police statement, alongside a copy of every text message she'd ever sent me about that truck, side by side, for her to look at, for Jimmy to look at, for them both to sit with on a Wednesday afternoon and understand exactly how thoroughly and completely she had buried herself. Roger had it sent out Thursday morning. Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. "Jimmy," I picked up. "Dad." His voice was different. The casual ease was completely gone. He sounded like a man who'd spent the last 24 hours reading documents he couldn't unread. "Dad, I need to talk to you. I'm listening." A long pause. "She told me she had permission. She told me you said it was fine. There it is. He didn't know. Now, I want to stop here. Because this moment right here is the one I've replayed the most. Because as angry as I was at Jimmy for the Lowells and the dismissed calls and the casual entitlement of it all, hearing his voice in that moment, I heard something I recognized. My son had been lied to, too. "Jimmy," I said, "check your own texts. Everything I sent you. Every time I told you that truck needed to come back. Did I ever once say Cindy had permission?" Silence. "Did she ever show you a text from me giving her permission?" More silence. "No," he said quietly. "She made it up," I said, not cruelly, just clearly. "She made it up when she was scared. And she said it to a police officer, and now it's documented." I heard Jimmy exhale, long and slow, the sound of a man deflating. "Dad, I'm sorry. I should have made her bring it back on Friday. I shouldn't have sent you that. The LOL?" A pained pause. "Yeah? No," I said. "You shouldn't have." We stayed on the line together for a moment without speaking. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes 2 people just need to sit in the truth of a thing together. "What happens now?" Jimmy asked. "She has 14 days to reimburse the towing bill." I said, "That's between her and you. Roger Patton handles everything else, and the false statement? That's between her and the DA." Jimmy went quiet again. Then, barely above a whisper, "Did she really think you wouldn't find out?" I've asked myself that question 100 times. I think the honest answer is yes. She really did. She thought I was a speed bump. She thought I was a man who could be managed with a smiley face, and a sorry, and a son who'd smooth everything over. She had me so wrong it almost impresses me. "Get some rest, Jimmy," I said. "Talk to your wife." I hung up. The check arrived on day 11, certified mail, which I found deeply satisfying. The same way it had been sent to them, it came back to me. Envelope from Jimmy and Cindy Scott, Dunbar Street, Tempe, Arizona. Personal check, signed by Cindy. I held it in my hands for a minute, standing at my mailbox on Mesquite Trail in the November Phoenix afternoon. The sun was lower now, that golden desert light that hits different in the fall, bouncing off the hood of my black F-150, sitting right where it belongs in my driveway, right where it always belonged. I took a photo of the check, sent it to Roger, sent it to Ted. Ted replied in 30 seconds. "Told you. Squeaky clean." I laughed for the first time in 2 weeks. Now let me tell you what happened to Cindy's false statement. The DA reviewed the file. Roger had submitted my documented texts alongside Cindy's statement. The contradiction was, in Roger's words, not subtle. The DA gave Cindy 2 options: accept a formal diversion agreement, essentially a documented acknowledgement of the false statement, probationary in nature, no jail time but permanently on record, or take her chances with a filing. She signed the diversion agreement on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. I was home. Jimmy and I had dinner about 3 weeks later, just the 2 of us, Lupe's Cantina on 7th Street. We'd been going there since he was 17. Chips, salsa, the carnitas plate we always split. We didn't talk about the truck for most of it. We talked about his job, talked about the sons, talked about his grandfather's old watch that Jimmy wanted to get repaired before the holidays. Normal stuff, father and son stuff. Then, toward the end, over what was left of the chips, Jimmy set down his water glass and looked at me. "Dad," he said, "I want you to know I understand why you did it." I looked at my son. "And I want you to know," he continued, "that I told Cindy clearly that if anything like this ever happens again with you, with anyone in this family." He paused. "I won't be calling her side." I held his gaze for a moment. Then I nodded. Once, that's all I needed. We split the check, drove home separately. I pulled into Mesquite Trail, parked my F-150 in my driveway, and sat in the cab for just a minute before going inside. Quiet street, cool November air coming through the window. My truck exactly where it belongs. Some people see a quiet man and think nothing's happening behind his eyes. They see patience and call it weakness. They see restraint and call it fear. They take his truck on a Friday morning and send him a smiley face and think that's the end of it. It was just the beginning. My name is William Scott, and I know this. What's mine stays mine, always. Let me hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below. I will see you on the next one.